a sparkly, glittery, fluffy deer Christmas ornament in needle felt. Do you want to learn how to make this? I'm going to show you today. So I have to confess, this is a tutorial I have been planning for more than a year. Last year in the shops, I saw these little deer Christmas ornaments and I thought they would be lovely in felt. Because at the end of the day, yes, they're cute on the tree and everything, but well, they're not the best quality in the world and we don't know how they've been made. So you can make something that's your own. It's individual, it's cute, and it's like an heirloom. A Christmas ornament is something you're going to keep safe and use year after year. So why not make something yourself? And the raw materials are cheap, so it's going to cost about as much as this little guy, apart from your labour time. And wouldn't they be cute little gifts to give to people as well? I'm going to say this is about the level of a crafty beginner. It would be easier if you've had some practice with needle felting, specifically creating wire armatures, felting onto wire armatures, felting curved shapes, and adding long hair. So if you haven't done any felting before, I would maybe suggest practicing just a tiny bit, but I am sure a crafty beginner can totally manage this. And I am just using the raw materials I have sitting around my house. So what I used for this was florist's wire, some core bats in white. If you have a bright white, this would be so much better, but I was just using what I had and I still think it's cute. Some tops in a nice white, glass eye, tiny bit of black, and some glue and some kinds of glitter. Confessions to make here, I didn't have any glitter, and then I remembered years ago I had bought some eye makeup with some glitter in it, and obviously I didn't know about the danger to the oceans and everything there, so I don't use it anymore. But if it's glued onto something, it's not damaging our oceans. So let's dive into the tutorial. Okay, so one of the most important things is getting a good armature. So I'm using this little deer that I found in the shop as an idea for my armature. And very simply, I'm just going to trace around him. I'm just going to draw around him to get an idea of the kind of size. Now, as you'll have noticed, my deer ended up larger. Always my items end up a little bit larger than the armature, but it's still a similar size, but it's just so handy to have an idea of what you're working from. So then having an idea of anatomy of creatures in there, I then decide where to sketch in the armature. So usually the backbone is high up along the body and the waist and everything is lower down. So that's why I've made it like this. We've got the hocks, we've got the thigh, and here are the measurements, rough measurements, if you want to make something similar. So first wire is the head, neck and front leg. So I fold it in half and twist to the level of the first black dot here, which is the shoulders. And then I'm going to fold the wire out to make the shoulders. Second wire is the back and the back legs. Slip it on over what we've already made and twist a couple of times. This makes the shoulders. What I've done is twisted so that the front legs go down twice. And now bring the back together, twist that until the length of the back's reached, fold it out the way, and then bend down after about 1 centimetre out either side. So the hips and the shoulders are about 2 centimetres across in length. And then I'm folding the rest of the wires based on my little sketch here, or you can do that even easier based on the measurements I gave you earlier. I'm using here needle-nosed pliers. The wire is just firm enough, but just soft enough that I can bend it by hand, but you just get a little more precise with the needle nose pliers. And once the feet or the hooves length is right, I then fold it out the way and trim off some of the rest. So we've got flat feet here. Anytime I'm using wire, I like to turn the ends in a tiny bit. That'll make him a little more stable as well, but it just stops you basically stabbing yourself, having a little bit of wire that can poke out of your sculpture and stab people. So here we have the thigh and a little bend for the hocks, and then another bend for the ankle. I'm not sure what the technical term for that is. And you can mark out your distances with a pen on the wire. This is paper coated florist wire. So we've bent out for the ankle and then bending across back flat for the foot. I decided it was easier to turn the wire in on itself and make almost the circumference of the hoof here. This literally just makes it easier to balance and to know where everything is. But I'm using my pliers to make sure that there isn't any stabby bits. And now just because we've got the shoulder area and the thigh with a give in them, I can push and pull a little bit to make sure that he can stand up already. Now, going to wrap him with the fibre. This is just a carded white bat. And for a dainty little sculpture, you want to get as little wool as you can, wrap as neatly as you possibly can. So we'll have nice slender legs. And I just felt it at the minute in time. I'm just felting enough so it holds in place. Now when I'm starting on any of these legs, I wrap it round the back of his body first and kind of overlap at the top so it's caught on. So I keep this straight like a ribbon, and I can put a fair amount of tension and get a reasonably even wrap. You really want to practice this. Practice wrapping the wire, and it gets easier with time. And again, wrapping the front legs, doing the same. I wrap the wool around the back of his neck and then double over at the top so it's kind of anchored at the top of him, and then wind down the leg, keeping it as tight and even as possible. This just makes the felting it so much easier if everything's nice and even. And then we're just going to go about covering the rest of the armature. Looking at the sculpture we've got, things like he's got a little bit of padding in his belly, the thigh, down to the hock, the first bend in the back legs, and the top of the shoulders. Get just a little more fleece. This is where the muscles are going to go. So here I'm adding belly, which is just a little bit of fluff, and then it's much easier if I add a lump of fluff and then wrap rather tightly another sort of flat piece of felt over the top. This is almost like putting in muscles and skin, but it holds it in place. So I've got fluff underneath and then held by some tightly wrapped stuff. And then I'm ready to felt that when needs be. You can also, while you're felting, squish the bits of softer unfelted fluff into the shape you want. And here is pulling out extra little bits for adding these muscles, like I said. So we go over his bum, down his thigh, and then up a little bit. You want to think of these muscles as being kind of flat in the one direction and chunky when you see from the side. The same, wrapping a bit of the shoulders to make the shoulders slightly thicker than the rest of the leg. And then we're nearly done. Now you can keep adding fibre while you're felting this up, but when I go away and go and felt this, I haven't added any more. So I'm just doing a blob on the head for the top of his head. And then I'm just going to take this guy away and felt him and felt him and felt him until we get this. And I'm just rearranging the legs, always checking he still stands up. I can pull or push the legs a little bit to get that sorted. Now, if you haven't felted before, the direction you put in your felting needle influences the shape of what it's going to be. So as you can see, as I'm moving my item about, I'm changing where I'm stabbing in. I'm stabbing into the shoulder and the thigh to bring that little dent in a little bit so his tummy poofs out a bit more and his thigh muscles are rounded and nice and fat. Now a little pinch of fluff folded into a rough triangular shape, and I'm just felting it nice and firm. That's going to be his tail. Remember, anything you make while it's loose, it's going to be a bit bigger than when you felted it down. So make it about twice the size you want it to be while it's loose, and then felt it until it's firm. With these sculptures, I like to take a good amount of time really felting this to make sure that it's nice and firm and secure, because hopefully this is going to be something that's going to be packed away and taken out year after year. So you want something that's firmly felted so it's not going to get damaged. Now, very similar to the tail, but in a much smaller amount, I'm taking a little pinch, folding it into a triangle and felting it to create the ears. And then next stage, after I've been firming this some more, and just for an example, when you're doing the legs, just look at how you're felting up into the hocks, up into these sharp points, the bends in the legs, just to make them nice and sharp. This is the hocks, and then the bend at the heel, the bend at the ankle of the animal, which is like the toes. Anatomy of animals is weird, but you want nice sharp bends in these places where we've bent the wire. If we keep it nice and clean, it looks awesome. And then checking where the ears go on. They're quite low and towards the back of the head, holding them in position and felting on until it's really nice and firm. You can add a tiny bit of fluff if you seem to have a kind of seam here, but if you felt it in from the ear into the head in all directions, then you're not going to get so much of a seam. It's really pretty smooth. That's the wonder of felt. You can get seamless, joinless joins. Now, to make his antlers, I'm just folding a piece of pipe cleaner. I'm choosing this because the wire is so much smaller and the fluff helps it hold when you're wrapping it. Again, always folding the end. So I've got a U shape big enough for his head, and I'm going to snip for each side 2 pieces of wire. And just wrapping each piece of wire is going to make 2 points to his horn. So one just about a third of the way up, pointing in the way, wrapping twice. Now, I would have liked to have made these slightly longer because by the time I fold them in and cover them with fleece and everything, they're not as long as I want them to be. But here we go, second piece, nearly right at the top. Wrap it round a couple of times and you've got 2 more points of the horn plus the top of the wire. So you've got 3 points of the horn at the top and 2 more points sort of a third of the way up. And this gives a pretty cool antlers. As I say, if the points had been a little bit longer, if these bits of wire had been a little bit longer, it would be even easier. But just trying to really carefully take tiny bits of fleece and cover all of the pipe cleaner. And you'll find as you're wrapping it, actually the fleece holds down the pipe cleaner and you can end up with narrower horns than what you started with, what it looked like to start with. Again, if I was going to do this creature again, one of the things I would change is the horns. I would prefer the points to be longer and I would have spent more time really wrapping this neatly. So it was fine, nice long horns with a bit of pointiness at the end. But I still think he turned out really awesome. But take your time and make sure and wrap every section. What I'm doing here, just drafting out the fibre so I can get a longer, thinner kind of ribbon, which is much easier to wrap round the pieces. But it's a bit of a fiddle. Again, takes a bit of practice. But if you make any mistakes, you've not lost anything. You can unwrap bits if you want to. I mean, seriously, a small bit of fleece and a bit of pipe cleaner, barely any cost at all if you've made any mistakes. So although these are time heavy, as sculptures, it's really pretty cheap and make something really pretty awesome. I think it's unique, individual, a bit of fun, and you can make any changes you want. You can adapt it in any way you want to. Now, I am here just stabbing out a hollow where I think each of the eyes are going to go. At the end of the day, once I started adding the antlers on, these kind of got deformed out of shape a little bit, so I had to do it again later, so I wouldn't bother there. I would just add on the antlers, which is super easy, just popping them on the top of his head. I decided to do his nose and his mouth. So it's a little triangle on the very tip of his nose for his nose, and some little threads of fleece to make up his mouth. So a little line down from the nose and then a little smile coming out from that. To make the threads of the black fibre, you just roll a little tiny bit between your fingers until it becomes a nice little thread basically that you can felt it in. Be really careful when you're felting on a real contrasting colour that your needle goes into the body of the work and it doesn't poke out any other side, else you'll have tiny black spots. Now the antlers were felted on place with a little bit of fluff along the top, and I felted super strongly, and here I am just felting in the area for his eyes. These are glass eyes on a little bit of a wire, so I felt all in one place till I make almost a tunnel for the wire to be able to go in. And make sure they fit, and the eyes, pick a couple of eyes that are nice and tiny. It looks cute with tiny. I use paver pole to stick them in. I just dip a little bit of the wire into the glue till I get a tiny bead on the glue, and then pop it into that tunnel I've made by felting. I have the pan pastels here because I've thought about colouring the hooves black like in the sculpture, but then I decided not to. So what I'm doing here now is for his fuzzy neck collar, I'm just taking a little bit of fleece and felting it in the direction I want the collar to be on. This is just a line for me to work. Now, to felt the extra fuzziness, this is really simple but takes a little bit of work. I'm cutting some bits of fleece to twice the length I want them to be, and then I'm taking off a chunk, rolling it a little bit in the center, and then felting that center onto him. So you can see a little chunk, roll it, and then felt all that center into it, fold the fleece back on itself and felt the sides, and then repeat, just moving a little bit further on each time where we're laying our little chunk. So pick a chunk, roll it, felt it in place, fold it so that the fur stands upright. I know it's super difficult to see white on white, but there. And then I do that all the way around, placing the center piece following that line that I'd made in just a little bit of scrap felt, so I get a nice kind of pleasing shape of a kind of collar draped around him. Right, let's speed this up. It takes a few minutes to go and do all this fur, and if you pack each bit, nice and tightly to the last bit you put on, then you get a really awesome dense fur. But it's a lovely kind of faux fur collar, and it just looks so awesome. You can see it starting to come together here. Yeah, it's really easy, but a really great way to get a lovely, dense, fluffy fur to make a collar, or if you were doing an animal that was fuzzy all over, you can do a pretty similar thing. Now here's the glitters I'm going to use. They're actually old eyeshadow glitters that I had. Always good to use up things that you don't use anymore. So these glitters are not good for the fishes, so I don't want to use them in makeup, but they're good if they're glued onto something. So I'm dipping his little back paws in my paver pole, and then dipping them in this kind of light gold glitter. This stuff got everywhere. It stuck to everything, but it is gorgeous. So dipping the paws in the hooves in the paver pole, and then dipping into the glitter. And because I work on the rest of the glitter here, just trying to dab off some excess, because I work on the rest of the glittered bits here, his hooves get a bit of a chance to dry slightly, and also it's covered in glitter, so they're not sticky later on, which you might see. So what I'm doing that you can't see so great here is I'm just using the paver pole to paint the ends of his antlers. Again, if the points of his antlers had been longer, then I would have been able to get more glue on and be able to get more awesome glitter on it. But I didn't do so great. I'm not so happy with how the antlers are, and I would love to put even more glitter on. But this is what I've got so far. So this is a slightly more white silvery glitter, and I'm just using the point of a knife to pick up some glitter. You can barely see it, it's so light and white. Picking up the glitter and just tipping it on top of the glue, hoping that some of it catches. Again, as you'll see with what I do with the hooves, what I would have been much better doing here with hopefully the longer antler tips is to do the same, hopefully to be able to dip it into the glitter, and then when it was 3/4 of the way dry, be able to manipulate this, squeeze the glue to make the ends of the antlers nice and sharp pointed, but I didn't wait till it was dry enough. Now the final bit I want to do is I'm just painting some glue onto his back. because I want the glitter there as well. So painting a good double layer of glue onto the back of my deer, unfortunately nicely off camera here, but just a nice chunky layer of glue, as you can see it there. And I'm scattering this thicker white but holographic glitter onto his back and letting it catch. I'm putting loads on because I really love this stuff. Hopefully you'll be able to see kind of. It looks way better in real life as it does in camera. There's a lot of white, a lot of silvery, but a lot of holographic colour picks up as well. It's the perfect colour. I really wish I knew where I'd got this stuff from, else I'd be telling you all to go out and buy it. Here I'm trying to shape the tips of the antlers, but I hadn't let the glue dry enough, and there really isn't enough glitter on them. But the hooves are another matter. Because they're fully covered in glitter, I'm able to mould them ever so slightly, and most importantly, push the tips flat. So now he's really secure standing up. Look at the state of my hands for all that glitter. But that's him pretty much. That's all you need to do. And I think he turned out really good. And this was about 4 hours for me to get him really, really firm. If you don't want them so firm, you don't have to felt quite so long. But here he is. You can get a little idea of this iridescent glitter, holographic glitter on his back when I turn the lights off. It's just gorgeous stuff. Unfortunately, cameras don't pick it up quite so well, but it is pretty gorgeous. I'm trying to get different angles. Unfortunately, I just did not get enough glitter onto the tips of his horns, and if I'd had nice silver glitter, that would have been cool. And then you see his hooves here. He's nice and stable on his hooves. They're flat at the bottom, and that just gold, dense, fine glitter just looked awesome on his hooves. Not so happy with his face, but there we go. So that's the original that I bought. I do love the tips in thick silver glitter there. The iridescent, the colours are pretty similar. Theirs is a slightly chunkier glitter. But can you see how that glue line on his back, it really looks unpleasant. Whereas using the paver pole, or hopefully any glue that you've got, but the paver pole, you can't actually see where I've added glue, although this is rock hard. You'll hear in a minute. And his hooves, again, he's nice and stable with those solid, chunky hooves with chunky glitter. It's pretty, but oh boy, that glitter really did get everywhere. And there's his main collar thing, which I think turned out really awesome as well. Yeah, for comparison, you can see, although I based my armature on the shop bought one, mine is just slightly bigger. And here you go, just some shots of my little guy and all that mess. That glitter went on for days, but it's fun. I hope you enjoy making your little deer sculpture. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed making your little guy, and feel free to share with me if you've created any in Pam Duthie's Crafty Friends on Facebook. I would love to see your work if you make a little guy, and let me know how covered in glitter you are too. This stuff gets everywhere, but I don't know how well that shows up. I love the effect, and also I really found that using the paver pole, the glue on his little hooves, dipping him right in the glitter, letting it set for a little bit, gave him nice malleable hooves that I was able to flatten out, and they're super nice and firm, which gives it so much better stability. So that worked really well. If I was doing this again, I'm not 100% happy with his face. I'd just work on his mouth a little bit, but he is cute. And also I would probably work on his antlers a little bit more. Overall, super cute. I'm also loving as well the way his back went. If you can, Mike's down here. His back is pretty hardened, but there is no glue line. You can't see the glue, and the glitter looks amazing on there. Hopefully I've got some decent pictures and you can see the holographic sparkle. It is really gorgeous. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments down below if you want more tutorials like this, because it's been a while since I've done some needle felting tutorials. They take a long time to make, I won't lie. It's quite a bit of work, but if you guys love these kind of things, let me know and I will put more effort in next year. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.